This is gonna hurt. It's time for the Suffering Podcast.
The most effective instructors are trained with life lessons. Academics can only take you so far until experience must take over to truly have an impact. The words will come to life and the message will be crystallized. Schooling is a small portion of your life where a lot of information is thrown your way. The subject matter is often hollow and the teacher's hands are often clean. Those who come to the classroom ragged and battle-tested have survived the wars that are written about in books and told in movies. Switching your perspective will change the verbiage from "this should work" to "this does work." Spending your life in an involuntary clinical trial has trained your heart to withstand the worst. Those that have gone before us are now obligated to pass on the information that their life has given them. I'm Kevin Donaldson, always here with Mike Felice, and welcome to the Suffering Podcast. So if you're a fan of overcoming adversity and overcoming suffering, and we're for you, because that's what we do here, and that's the stories that we highlight. So do me a favor, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, please comment, ring the bell so you can get notified of all of our new content, and now you can join. And of course, follow us on all social media so you can find out what we're up to when we're up to it. So I've been waiting a long time for you to come back in here, sister.
169 to, what are we?
This will be 229.
169 to 229. Think about how much life has changed from 169 to 229.
In a lot of ways, my life has got flipped upside down. But in a lot of ways, because of you, my life has been turned right side up. So it's funny how that works, right?
Very.
Yeah. So you got put in my place. You got put in my life at just the right time that I needed you the most.
That is such a compliment. God is so good at divine appointments.
Yeah, he's good at that stuff. Like, that's his forte, if anything else. Before we get into anything, let's throw a big shout out to our marquee sponsor. That's Toyota of Hackensack. Now, we don't trust anybody as podcasters, and we certainly don't trust anybody as retired police officers, but we do trust the guys over at Toyota Hackensack. So do me a favor, go to toyotahackensack.com and let them find you a car. Also, tell them the Suffering Podcast sent you. So, Sherrie, the more things change, the more they stay the same. We're going to lead off with our social media question. If money wasn't a factor, what would you do with your time? And this was submitted by Silver-Crack. I'm assuming it's a silverback, I'm guessing, or maybe they just like to smoke silvery crack. I don't know. So what do you think? If money wasn't a factor, what would you do with your time all day?
I love to travel. So I would probably go see places I haven't ever seen and spend my time traveling.
You don't travel enough?
Well, but as you know, I go someplace one day, I work, and then we turn around and we're out. So we don't get to see the sights.
Well, people have a very, when people find out that I'm traveling with you, people have a very skewed view of what our travel is like.
It's not all that.
I mean, take Arizona, for instance. We fly into Las Vegas, 2 hours and 45 minutes to the middle of nowhere in the dark, and they don't believe in streetlights.
Yes.
And we drive Havasu. So we drive past Havasu, Arizona, and I'm like, hey, that's where the London Bridge is. All right. Yeah. And then we just, we're on our way.
See ya.
So it's traveling's fun to a certain extent, you know?
The way we do it, it's exhausting.
Yeah.
Because we have to make the most of our time. So we got to get in and work and get out. And often it's in a different time zone.
That's the screwy part.
And we just did that in California.
That was rough.
That was 3 hours for you, right?
Yeah.
Because it was a 2 hour time change for me and 3 for you.
3 hour time change. So the normal stuff that I try to stay on schedule with was a little difficult. But, you know, if you're committed to make it work, then we weren't out there that long.
No, not long enough to get acclimated or anything. Just long enough to get in and get out.
Yeah, I leave Newark Airport at 9. I show up there at 11 o'clock. I'm like, hey, 2 hour flight's not bad. Why is the flight flight didn't seem that long?
Yeah, coming back?
So I think about this, you know, there's always that ever-present question, what would you do if you hit the lottery? What would you do if you hit the lottery? And everybody says, well, I do this, and I do this, and I do this, and I do this. And I thought long and hard about that answer, what would you do if you hit the lottery? Because at that point, money becomes a non-issue for you. My lifestyle wouldn't change, like where I live, the size house I live. That I don't think that would change because, you know, that much money, it becomes a great responsibility. My gift, there's a couple things that I would do. Of course, I'd give money. I'd probably give most of it away.
Agreed.
But one of the things that I always thought of is, wouldn't it be great to never have to charge somebody for anything ever again? Somebody calls you up and says, hey, Sherrie, I need you at my department. My department just doesn't have a budget. Oh, no, we don't charge you for that. Don't worry about it. It's all taken care of.
That would be so nice because I feel like oftentimes that hinders us.
Now, I'm not telling you I wouldn't fly first class, okay? Because that's pretty nice. I'm not telling you I wouldn't do that. There would be some comfort, some creature comforts. But if somebody wants me to go, like, so if somebody reaches out to me on social media and says, hey, listen, man, I really need your help, or I really want you to come and talk to this group of people. Okay, I'll be there Friday, and just go. And I think that would be the greatest gift in the world, to have that freedom. I don't think it would be really good for my kids to have money being no object,
I agree.
because I'm 50 years old. I think I've gotten to the point where I've worked for 40 years of my life, and I've come to appreciate how to earn a dollar.
And there's great lessons in that.
Yeah, there's a little bit of, you got to know what the value of money is. So I don't think that would be good for them, but I certainly wouldn't tell anybody. But I'd never charge anybody for anything. I'd be that person at a restaurant where if I see a server who maybe looks a little down, give them an extra tip. And that's the gift of having money. Unfortunately, I don't think too many people would do that. I don't think that's just not in people's nature. It's mine, 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 mine. No, it was never yours. It was given to you.
Yeah. And Gary and I both frequently do that when we're dining out. He will lean over and say, are you hearing anything about the tip? Because I hear God's voice, and I'll say, no, are you? God's really good at putting people on my heart that need an extra tip or something.
One of my favorite things to do, and I do it not as frequently as I like, but I do it. I get my coffee at the same place every morning, and I'll see somebody in the back, and just for whatever reason, I'm like, yeah, I'll buy their coffee. And then I'll walk out and never see them again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not looking for anything, but it makes me feel good to know that maybe their day is going to get a little bit better. Say, wow, that was really nice of them to do that.
I love to do that in the Starbucks line when I'm.
Well, yeah, you got to float alone to buy the Starbucks coffee, though.
When I'm paying for mine, I'll say, I'd like to get the car behind me too. And then I just drive off, and they don't know who I am and
why you did it.
Mm-hmm.
But it also screws with people a little bit, because they're like, well, why'd they do that? And now all of a sudden, what you hope happens is karma kicks in, where they do it for a person at a different location, and that's kind of what makes the world go round.
Or the one behind them. They'll catch the one behind them.
But with the amount of money that it would take that a lottery, let's just use the lottery for example, it comes with an enormous responsibility that I don't think people are ready for, because I think the right way to do it is, it's not yours. So use it for something good.
For good.
Yeah, I don't need a McLaren or a Maserati or a Ferrari. Can't fit in them anyway. So Silver Crack, thank you so much for sending that question in. Keep sending in your questions, and we will try to get them on the air. So Sherrie, I wanted you in here tonight for a few different reasons. Number one, we just finished shooting your next upcoming commercial, which stay tuned because it's going to play during this episode.
It was quite fun.
It was a lot of reading. It was a lot of thinking, a lot of reading, trying to think on your feet.
And not get tickled.
Not get the giggles. It was like Burt Reynolds and Dom DeLuise in Cannonball Run, where they're just laughing the whole time. But the reason I wanted you to come in here is we've been traveling together quite a bit, and we've been doing this stuff all over the country, teaching these classes about trauma-informed training. And it's such a revolutionary idea, the way you do it. Obviously, teaching sexual assault is nothing new. There's plenty of people who do it, but the way you do it is second to none. So before we get into that, you were here on episode 169.
I was.
Okay. And why don't you give our audience, for those people who haven't watched episode 169, just a little, give me the Reader's Digest version.
Let's see. I'm a survivor of long-term incest, sexual assault, sexual abuse, all kinds of sex crimes, physical, mental, verbal, emotional abuse, the whole gamut, which led to a life of making decisions to survive instead of being a productive person in society. And the fallout from that is encompasses every decision in your life that you make. And I floundered in my mental illness for so very long before I got help. And I struggled in the what I could have been or what I could have should have done, and I think about what I could have should have done with this brain I have today instead of remembering that she was 6 and 7 and 8, and so I can't make those decisions with this brain. That's not fair. Um but it was just a life filled with trauma and fallout. And
Well, the trauma didn't end. So when you left home at 17, and I know, please forgive me, I'm not discounting your ex-husband, what he did, but people don't realize that, oh, great, you got out. You got out. Well, no, not really.
yeah. And just because you get out the door doesn't mean it's over. And I tell people often, when it's over, it's just beginning.
It's like you get out of the lion's den, but you got a bear trap around your ankle, and you're just dragging it along, and you're
Yes.
picking up all this stuff, and it hurts like hell. But you don't want to do it because you're trying to survive, because that's what you've been in. You've been in survival mode for 60.
Yeah. Well, I hope I'm not there anymore, but I was 35 when I told the first person about my abuse, and that was my sister, and my perpetrator was my father. And so that was 35. Now, the average age of an incest survivor to cry out is 52. So, in that way, I feel like I'm blessed because I could have lost another, I'm really bad at math. So,
17.
however much that is, another 17 years. Um, but then started, it's the but then. And that started the therapy and the telling people and, telling my mother and telling my children's father and all of the fallout that came from that.
It's crazy, too, because when you came in here for the first time, I remember hearing this story, and I've heard some really awful stories in this studio. I remember hearing your story going, oh my gosh, this is crazy. This is insane. And as a matter of fact, on your episode, because we called it The Suffering of Incest, and I remember very clearly for a couple of reasons. Number one, you're very unforgettable. But number two, I wanted to hit home with the verbiage. So when I called it The Suffering of Incest, we had our channel monetized, and I chose to demonetize our channel for your episode specifically because there's some things that are more valuable to me than money.
Yeah, I don't think YouTube probably likes that word very well.
They don't. They don't even like you to say sexual assault, which is insanity to me. That's one thing when you go out and speak, when you go out and teach these classes. It's no hold bars. We don't hold back on verbiage. It is what it is. There'll be the occasional F-bomb dropped because of we know our audience.
Right.
Yeah, and our audience appreciates that stuff. But how crazy is that nobody wants to say sexual assault? I don't know about you, but that makes me incredibly mad.
You can't say sexual assault, you can't say sexual abuse. And interestingly enough, most people don't recognize that there's a difference in sexual assault and sexual abuse or what the differentiating factor is. And for those of you that don't know, it's age. So sexual abuse is 18. I believe it's 18 and under. Sexual assault is an adult that's 18 and over. So that's how we often interweave those, but there is a difference. Sometimes I just refer to it as a sex crime because that just encompasses everybody. But yeah, and we find that a lot. It's people don't want to talk about it, and that's why we're in the mess we're in as a country with this.
We're watering things down, and all that does is it takes away. I feel very devalued when they use it, SA.
Yes,
right? I do. I feel very devalued. So I went through something to be called 2 letters. Who are you trying to protect? You're certainly not going to protect me. I don't need protection like that. Words don't hurt me.
Well, then let's call it what it is. And society in general doesn't like that. Let's package it up nicely so it's palatable, and then we can make it easier.
More digestible.
Yeah. Don't say that. And for instance, that I often use when we teach is most people think that sexual assault or sex crimes are committed by a stranger that pulls up in a white panel van. We know that's not the truth. I think it's 82% of all sex crime victims know their perpetrator. But that's too much for society in general. So if they can back it off to a stranger in a white panel van, well, bless their heart. They went, they just went out on their bike and they never came back.
I think that relieves the caregivers more than anybody else. Yeah, it relieves the caregivers. It relieves them of any type of culpability that you put your child in that situation. No, it was just it was a random crime and they were just in the wrong place. And everybody knows the vans we're talking about. Like if I use the word rape van, you know what I'm talking about. It is a van with a fisheye in the back.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And the reason I know that is one of the crossing guards near my school when I was a kid, his name was Ernie. Blue van, fisheye in the back. And I'm like, damn.
And some shag carpet.
Yep. And always a kid sitting in the van with the door open.
Oh, Lord.
Always. And you always wonder. I back then I knew the guy was weird, so I never went near him. But always a young girl in there. Always. It's just bizarre. So I don't know whether that model van lends itself to this, but I remember you ever watch the show It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia?
I don't like to tell you no. Every time you say, have you seen? I'm not a TV watcher.
You are the worst. I can't even have stupid movie references with you.
See, I wasn't allowed to watch TV as a child. We weren't allowed to be idle. I wasn't allowed to be idle. Like reading a book or watching TV, those things were not. Because if you were being idle, you could be doing the dishes or,
there was other
cleaning
jobs.
The toilet or something. But just being idle was not an option. So I have difficulty sitting and watching TV because I'm filled with guilt of I should be, even at my age now.
There could be something more productive that you're doing.
Yes, and I don't know how to be still.
Yeah, so that's something that I've had to learn. I've had to learn how to be still. Like I have a tough time doing that. I'm watching TV and it drives my wife crazy because I watch a movie with my phone. Okay, I watch a movie with my phone, but she thinks I'm looking at internet porn. No, she doesn't. She thinks I'm looking at social media or something like that. I'm not. I have a very my brain can multitask very good.
Mine does not.
So when I see something on TV, I'm like, or if I see an actor, I'm like, oh, I wonder what happened there. I haven't seen that actor in a while, and I'll look the actor up. Or if I see an event, I'll look up that event. And so it gives me the opportunity to learn because like you, where I feel watching TV is a waste of time. I should be learning something. I should be doing something. I should be doing this. So I multitask when I watch TV.
See, why can't we just give ourselves grace and think, I've worked hard all day. If I want to spend the next hour just resting my body, then I'm good.
And to this day, I do you sleep with the TV on? Do you fall asleep with the TV on? See,
No.
I have to.
Gary has it on, and so it's in the background.
Yeah, I need that background noise. And, when I have this weird thing, like I'll sit there and watch with one eye and that eye will just close because by the time I get to bed, I'm exhausted. I'm shot. So you tell your story for a living now, but it wasn't always that way. You do. You tell your story for a living.
That's true. I do.
The first time that you opened up in public, not to a private person, in public, where you're a group of 5 or more, whatever it may be. What was that feeling like stepping up in front of that audience? Are you ready to enhance your skills and provide the best care to those who need it the most? I'm Kevin Donaldson.
I'm Sherrie Allsup. Our trauma-informed training is here to help, and we've been traveling across the country delivering this essential need to departments and organizations of every size, shape, and makeup.
We come to you with on-site training so you don't have to worry about travel or scheduling conflicts.
This isn't just a class, it's an interactive experience. You'll learn directly from subject matter experts who teach from a victim's point of view, putting you in the shoes of those who have experienced trauma.
This approach allows you to understand trauma on a deeper level and to better serve the individuals you work with.
We'll guide you through new interview techniques that prioritize a victim-centered approach, ensuring safety and empathy in every conversation.
And for those of you in law enforcement or other fields, our training includes post-credits, giving you the extra added value and recognition for your commitment to professional growth.
We offer references upon request to show just how effective our training can be.
Don't miss the opportunity to improve your understanding of trauma and make a real difference in the lives of those you serve. Get in touch with us today by going to sherrieallsup.com and let us bring trauma-informed training to your organization.
Together, we can make a lasting impact. I actually have a picture of that day, and it's a horrible picture. I should share it with you. The look on my face is terror and guilt and lots of other things. I was it was the church that I went to, and they were having a cardboard testimony, which I'd never heard of a cardboard testimony, and they give you a piece of poster board like you would use for a science project, the heavy one. I can't think of what that's called.
Poster board.
Yeah, but it's the
Foam board?
the thick one. Yeah,
Yeah, foam board.
And on the front of it, you write who you were, and on the back of it, you write who you are now. And so on the front of mine, it said incest victim suicide attempt. And then you stand there in front of the congregation. It wasn't just me. There were 20 people that came out. You know, some said alcoholic, some said porn addiction, whatever you were. And then you stand there like this and hold it. And then you count to 10 or whatever, and you turn it around. And on the back, mine's, and I still have it, it says thriving survivor. And that was and those, I couldn't even speak the words. I certainly couldn't say the word incest out verbally. So my first time was to stand in front of a group of, front of my church with a cardboard sign, and the look of sheer terror on my face.
Mine would say loser on the front, asshole on the back.
Is that an upgrade or?
It's kind of like, it's just sort of mingled somewhere in the middle. No, but in all honesty, because of people like you who dare to take that little chance, it gives hope to other people. And this is something that while that moment was extraordinarily scary, and I've experienced that moment with you, in front of you, what it does is it gives people a little bit of empowerment. Like you always hear that word. That's a buzzword, right? Empowerment. You empower people. I think a lot of times people don't use it accurately, but with you, that is a very accurate word.
I am so honored. Thank you. That means the world to me, because I came from a place where I had absolutely no voice, none, had no communication skills. Nobody wanted to hear my voice. Nobody wanted my opinion on anything. And I just became tiny and small, and I didn't speak up, and I didn't. It's like the first time we went to Parker, and I really wanted Starbucks iced tea, but I didn't want to be a bother to you.
Do you mind if I tell that story? Because I think
No.
that's wonderful. So one of our travels was out to a Native American tribal land in Parker, Arizona. And I knew Sherrie gets a unsweetened iced tea from Starbucks every morning. And Parker has nothing. I mean, nothing. But they have a Starbucks.
Woohoo!
They have a Starbucks, and it was right near our hotel. And I said, would you like to go get I get in the car because I can't sit in the passenger seat. I'll throw up. I get in the car and I'm driving.
I feel like I'm real brave. I let you drive.
I can't. I'm not a good passenger sitter. So I'm sitting in there and I said, would you like to get your unsweetened iced tea? I'm like, Sherrie, ask for it. It's okay. It's okay. We'll go right there and get it.
It was, what do you think, it was 2 blocks out of the way?
Yeah, and I actually I think I made you say it.
You did.
Yeah, just say it.
2 blocks.
Yeah.
And I didn't feel worthy enough, and I didn't want to impose on you that you would drive 2 blocks out of your way so that I could get tea.
And it was a proud moment. I actually said it when we were teaching the class that day. I said, Sherrie had a big moment this morning.
I did.
It was a
That's
celebration moment.
Crazy. It's crazy.
But it's those little things, right? So it's those little victories. It's you holding up the cardboard sign. It's you asking for me to drive 2 blocks to go get you a drink. That's crazy.
It is.
Uh,
That's the level of not wanting to bother anybody or be an inconvenience. But now, listen, now I'll tell you, if we have to drive 5 miles out of the way, I don't care.
I gotta have my star. I can't work without it. So this morphed, and to abbreviate the story, when the chief of police came up to you, was it at the cardboard event that he came up to you, or was it another
No,
time?
I was at a college. I was working at a college teaching a student body. in Georgia.
On sexual assault training. Okay, how did that morph into you holding up that cardboard sign, that evolution, where the next thing you know, you're in front of people teaching a class?
Well, I had a group of people in Corpus Christi, which is where I live part-time. Kansas City, it's my real home.
Go
asked-
Eagles. Sherrie and I, so Sherrie and I were good friends, but on February 9th, we weren't friends for like 4 hours.
Listen, I give that to you on a silver platter. You guys earned that. There's nothing I can say other than congratulations.
No, you gave my kids something because I took my kids to the Super Bowl parade and they got to see the madness that is Philadelphia.
They will never forget that.
Never.
I'm so glad you took them.
Yeah.
So a little group in Corpus asked me to come and Stephen's ministry, I think it was, to come and talk to them. And I thought, what about what? What? I'm sorry. What do you want me to say? And they said, can you help us understand? Because Stephen's ministry, which I didn't know at the time, they're like a second tier under the pastor. So not the pastor can't pastor or counsel everybody in the church. Obviously, you have to have people under there. So Stephen's ministry does that, and they'll try to take some of the load off the pastor. So they wanted to learn about sexual assault. And I couldn't, for the life of me, figure out why they thought I was someone that could help them. But I said to Gary, will you go with me? And we were just at a square table with maybe 20 people. And I just let them ask me questions because I didn't know what to tell them. And then another little group. And I somebody knew somebody in some college, and they reached out to me and said, will you come talk? Sexual assault on a college campus is rampant. And I thought, what do you want me to I'm not sure what you want me to say. And they said, well, can you just tell your story? And maybe if some college student needs somebody to talk to, they would feel brave enough after they hear you, which I didn't really get to go to college. So I don't have a dorm experience or anything to pull from.
It's not as glamorous as you think it is.
But so I started doing some research on some statistics and especially in a college environment and all of those things. And I had done many colleges before I met this chief of police. And then when I met him at a college in Georgia, he asked me to teach his officers. And I truly believed he had lost his mind because I cannot, I can stand in front of students. They don't know what they don't, they're not going to judge me. But law enforcement who's trained, this is their job. I got nothing. And so I built a 4-hour class and I thought, how am I going to fill 4 hours? And now you and I are fighting for the microphone to get what we want to say in 8. I'm convinced we could do 16.
Oh, easy. 100% easy. But it had to take not only the courage to tell your story, to tell something that is so intimate, so hurtful, and embarrassing.
Yes.
It's personally embarrassing to say it, to verbalize those words for the first time in front of strangers, complete strangers. And I honestly believe telling complete strangers is a little bit easier than telling people you know. But it's still a very, very daunting task. People don't understand what kind of courage it is. And if just to bring us home with something like that, how many classes or how many people have we been in front of where we're done and you'll see people just sitting there and just sit there, wait for the class to clear out and then come up to us one at a time or catch us separately off to the side. Mm-hmm. And we do that very well. And I don't think it was ever planned where we separate when the class is done because some people want to talk here and some people want to talk here, or they just want an opportunity to say something.
I think we should circle back on how we ended up together, because that's kind of interesting.
Well, you came here.
Yes, yeah. And I didn't know you or Mike, had never met you. I tell the story now that, in fact, Gary just asked me, we were in our rental car and you called and it came up, the Suffering Podcast. And he said, why does Kevin's number say the Suffering Podcast? And I said, because I couldn't remember the dude's name and I knew I wasn't ever going to talk to him again. And so he was calling me for pre-show stuff. And it's still like that. But I knew that night when I walked in that you and Mike would be forever in my life. I didn't know how, but I knew you would be something in my life. And that That was in March last year, March of 24. And in December of 23, my partner that I had worked with for many years quit. And I was floundering. I didn't know what to do. I really kind of thought maybe that was a great run, but I'm done. And
It's got to be an ending to it sometime, right?
yeah, and I couldn't imagine. I mean, I think I worked with him for 8 years, and he knew my ins and outs and all my quirks, and that I wanted tea in the morning and all the things. And I didn't know how I would ever find that again. And so as I'm trying to decide what to do with my life and whether I'm going to keep going for gigs or whether I'm going to quit or what I'm going to do. And Gary, after I met you and then we came back for your book signing, and Gary said,
well, you got to go back to post show. So you sit in front of us and you tell this story, which kind of it blows your socks off. And then you were going to wait, you were going to call an Uber, and you're right down the street. You weren't that far away. And I'm like, no, because you didn't have a good Uber experience either.
That guy, the guy that brought me here, asked me for my number because he was going to come get me. Now, listen, this horrific life I've lived, I am like Miss Naive. Do you remember when you came down to get me? I'm about to give the guy my number because he's off the clock is going to come back and pick me up. And for some reason, I think that, that's just so nice.
Yeah.
And about that time, you're like, what the hell are you doing?
No. Yeah, we don't do that. This is Jersey. It's a different story now around here. But I ended up giving you a ride home or ride back to your hotel that night, and we sat and talked. And I said some stuff to you that I never let out, that I never really told to an extent that little drips and drabs here and there, but never told to an extent. And why did I do that? Because you made me feel powerful, like, okay, I'm not weird. There's nothing, well, there is something wrong with me, and I am a little weird, but not that portion of my life. And that's what was so important to me. And through that right there is in my mind is when I felt a connection to you, is when I felt, okay, this is somebody that's going to be in my life for a while. And there's many people in here who I'm very, very good friends with, and I talk to them all the time. You were a little bit different. And I'm sorry to the other guests, but Sherrie's a little bit different. We have other things that connect us. And then
And I believe trauma connects trauma.
Sure.
I believe that. And I can
trauma bonds.
Pick up on people who I don't even know and feel that bond to them.
So I do this with other officers too, even just officers who are in shootings or may have a little bit of damage in them. I can see it, and I'll talk to them, and I'll say whatever, and I'm like, yeah, he's not telling us the whole story. There's a lot more to that, and I'm sure you can do that with sexual assault survivors.
But listen, I was really proud of you that night.
Yeah,
that we sat under the breezeway in your car at that hotel, and you were not giving a lot of information, but I could tell it was information you hadn't given before.
Yes.
And when someone trusts you with their deepest, darkest secrets,
well, who else would I trust with that stuff?
That's really huge.
There was nobody else in the world. And listen, my wife is she's a darling person, and she's wonderful and stuff. But if I tell her what I told you, she's not going to get it. And you're always afraid of being judged.
Absolutely.
You're going to think I'm damaged goods. You're going to think, there's that whole mess there. But nobody else is going to understand that. And then, so I would call you from time to time. I would call you up and I would just check in, say how you're doing.
You were unraveling your ball of yarn.
You said something to me that I've never forgot. You let the cat out of the bag. You opened up Pandora's box when you had the lunch with your friend. Again, go back and check out 169. And you tried to stuff it back in the box and you couldn't close it. Mm-hmm. Well, that's sort of what happened to me the night that I drove you back to your hotel. I opened up a box and I couldn't close it. And I started having nightmares. And I started having all sorts of just not bad thoughts, but just like I couldn't stop them. I couldn't close the box anymore. I buried it deep for so long.
Well, I think we need to make sure people understand I have full memory of my abuse. Yours was in a black place that wasn't there.
The way
yours are coming back, you're thinking, What,
Is this
am I
real?
making this up?
Yep. So I describe it when we go out and talk like it's like watching a movie through clouds. Okay, where at certain points it's very clear, and certain points I can see silhouettes, I can see some outlines, some motion, but I can't really make everything out. But every once in a while, that scene will replay and it'll get clear. So, and it's a blessing and a curse at the same time, because while I want full recall, I really don't want full recall because I'm afraid of what's going to pop up. And these things just kept popping up and popping up. So I called you one day, and I remember where I was in the town that I work. I called you up, and I'm like, yeah, I'm having these nightmares. I'm just having a little bit of a difficult time. I told you about that stuff, and I can't seem to put it back down to where it was. I buried it for so long. And I opened up even more. And I opened up even more. And over time, you became someone who I could trust because I knew you weren't going to judge me either. But then we run into this problem all the time too, where somebody might not tell you because although what I had happened to me was very traumatic, in my mind, it's not half as bad as what you went through, right? And then we start fighting for trauma trophies, which is a big mistake.
Yes. A person that's been raped once, I'm no more powerful with my trauma, and I don't get a bigger trophy because mine was ongoing for years and years. Trauma is presents and manifests in the same way.
And why the hell did you bring me to Louisiana? That's a question I don't think I've ever asked you.
Well, that's what I was telling you. So here I am without a partner trying to decide the fate of my life and thinking that when my partner left, I was way more devastated than I should have been. I have come to realize that I depended upon him way more than I could have or should have because I could carry myself.
Yeah, you don't need anybody.
And I didn't know that. And Gary kept saying, you can do this by yourself. And I said, but I can't. And I think, in fact, I don't really want to. I want somebody to play off of.
It becomes fun.
Yes. And I don't want to do it alone. And so he said, would you consider Kevin for your partner? And I remember saying, no, he's got a job and a podcast and a family and a wife and kids and no. And he said, it's just an idea. Just throwing it out there. It's your company. It's your business. You do whatever you want. And so that's when we talked about Louisiana. And in Thibodaux, Louisiana, every year, I do a juvenile conference that's been built around me, and I'm so proud of that. And so we educate all the officers that are working with juveniles, which for me and for you, that's where we want to jump off and protect those kids. So my friend Holly goes with me. She's a therapist, but I thought there's a really good, safe place if you want to go to maybe tell your story. A little bit of it, a lot of it, none of it, some of it. And we were very precise at where we put you so that if you
drop the ball,
if you started to drown, then we could step up and we had a safety net in place, but you didn't need it. You just you just went.
You didn't tell me this until afterwards where you said, yeah, Holly and we had this whole thing in place just in case you couldn't get up there and you do it.
Well, I'm not going to force you. But...
No, listen, you got a class to protect. It was the first time that I've ever uttered that in a public format, right? And I did that a few different times, never once saying it on here, never once opening up on here. And I always considered my life to be pretty public. You know, I tell you all the bad crap that I did. I let the vulnerabilities fly, but I was still hiding that one spot. So for me to do that was a big deal for me. And so when I was going down there, I was nervous. But I'm like, it's kind of like going downhill in a car where the brakes are out and you're like, screw it. Can't steer. No point in steering now. Just go. And that's what I did. And it was such an amazing experience for me because I was able just to go bleh, and throw it all up and try to make some sort of coherent linear line of storytelling.
And that sheriff's department is such a great place to they're so non-judgmental and Captain Kevin will just take you and you'll think, "Oh my gosh, I've known him for years and years." And but you in such a 1 year's time, you have crafted your storytelling to this height that I would have never thought anybody could reach in a year. And when we were in California, and I think we should tell people that we worked together in 8-hour blocks of time, and in California we had 1 hour and 15 minutes, and we didn't know how that was going to go. But you just you were making eye contact, and you were doing all
That's
the
because you got
things.
in my head by telling me that I look down every time I tell my stuff. You're like, oh, yeah, did you notice Kevin looks down? Well, I notice it now. I was like, Sherrie, you're killing me. You're picking me apart. But it was constructive criticism. You're right.
Well, and I want them to see trauma. I want them, they're educated detectives and chiefs and law enforcement. After listening to me talk and after listening to you talk, they should be able to pick up on some trauma cues here. So that's why what do you see? What'd you hear? What made you think I'm a trauma victim? What made you think Kevin's a trauma victim? For me, it's lack of eye contact. I try to look over the top of their heads. And that's something I work on every single day of my life, every day. And for you, you just looked down. You would look up until you got to places that were uncomfortable, and then your eyes divert. But I want them to know that because, as we know in law enforcement, if you're interviewing somebody and they're not making eye contact, the first assumption is they're lying. Well, you're not lying about your story, and I'm not lying about my story. That's just trauma.
I did it in here. We had a gentleman in, Connor Furu, right? And it wasn't sexual assault. It was his father was medically was in a real bad place. And he's sitting here. Bobby was in with me and Richie Toro, who's the head coach of Lyndhurst High School. Bobby's sitting right here, and I'm watching Connor talk about his dad, and I'm looking at this. And I said, just let me stop you for a minute. You feel some kind of guilt for not taking care of your father? And he goes, yeah, I never told anybody that. And I said, I can tell by I swear to you, that's how I picked that up. I picked up that body language because I do the same thing when I talk about my past and my childhood. But with that class in Louisiana, here's what surprised me the most. I've sat in those classes as a police officer, and they are boring.
I hear that.
Oh my God! When you find out that you want to go to a class, hey, you're happy because maybe you get some overtime. It's an away game. You don't have to really do anything, but you're in there and you're trying to stay awake. You're getting messages from outer space. Your head's bobbing.
That's what people tell me.
And I was so shocked at the amount of interaction. They just heard you tell your story, which is god awful. It is so hard to listen to. It kind of hits you right in the gut. And they're asking you questions. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm sitting back and I'm watching. I'm in the back of the room and I'm watching. And I'm like, they've never encountered somebody who's gone through what you've gone through. And they're curious. And that's a wonderful thing. Now all of a sudden they want to learn more. The amount of interaction you get in your class, I've never seen before in a police class.
Nobody sleeps on me.
Nope.
I'm not going to let them sleep on me. It's too important, not for me, but it's too important for the next case that they work and the one after that. And I want them to learn. Have you noticed nobody's ever on their phone
Never.
in our class?
Never. That shows me that they're not looking at you as damaged goods. They're looking at you as a source of knowledge, as a source of information that they don't have. Thankfully, they don't have that information. But in their professional career, they certainly need it. And they need to hear from somebody like you.
And I never thought, I'm often say I'm just a girl with a sappy story, and how it's blossomed into this international gig where I get to go to all these great places and meet these fabulous people. And I don't go anywhere that I don't leave with a new friend. Certainly not somebody that I talk to every day, but there are people that if I needed something, I feel certain, well, anybody in Thibodaux I could call, but just like the people that we met in California at the CALIA conference, there's 3 or 4 people. Sheriff Will's one of them.
Sheriff Will's amazing man in
Clay
Liberty.
County, Missouri.
In Liberty, which I can't wait to go to. Jesse James. God, just Jesse James, first daytime bank robbery, Liberty, Missouri. I can't wait to go. The hell with Clay County Sheriff's Department. I want to go see where Jesse James robbed a bank.
And there's a museum. I think there's hair in there. You can.
That's
look
fine.
at
I'll take it
his
with
hair.
me. I think I
Look
can
at
get that
his
on the
hair.
airplane through TSA.
Put it look up.
But then you go to these, you take a piece of each department from you. Here's what I found about doing several of these things. You take a piece of each department. And the one that affected me the most, and I don't know whether it's the same with you, is Parker, Arizona, with the Colorado River Indian tribe.
Parker, Arizona has my heart. If Parker, Arizona didn't have a dime, I would be there every year.
So the officers who we were in front of are covering vast expanses. The one department was covering a 400 square mile area with 6 officers, of which 6 were in the class.
And they should have 40, right?
I think he said fully staffed, they were at 40. They're covering it with 6. Now you're on Native American land, and Native Americans usually, this is not always, are not very well to do. They have substance abuse problems, they have domestic violence problems, they have sexual assault problems, which we found a statistic that was crazy, where 1 out of 4 women is sexually assaulted. It's 10 times the national average on Native American land. And it just blew me away. But here's the impact that we made on Colorado River Indian Tribe. Our last day there, Chris takes us down. Why don't you explain what happened? And this will speak to the impact that you make.
He wanted to take us to the Colorado River, and I've learned that was my second or third time in Parker, Arizona. Water is very important to them in their beliefs and their history, and I didn't know that. So the Colorado River, which runs
Life.
through there, that's their life. They get water, and they get the trees that grow along the banks and all of those things. But as we were there for 2 days. We taught 2 days, 8-hour classes with different officers rotating through. And Chris Harper in Parker, I have to stop and think about that. He's the nicest guy. And at lunch on the second day, he asked us if we had time before we left town, which was about a 3-hour drive back to Vegas, to fly out, to meet him at the river, that he wanted to do a
Cleansing ceremony.
yes. And I'm not going to lie, I thought, is this like a voodoo hex? What are we doing here? And you were more brave than I was. And it was so...
It was an experience.
I can't even explain. He talked about what the water meant, what the trees in the water meant, how that was their lifeline. And because of the heaviness of what we talk about, he didn't want us to leave with that on us.
It was like ceremoniously washing the dirt off of us from the experience that we just had to relive.
Yes.
Okay. And he had told me every person that comes back from war, whether it started in World War II or World War II when Indians, Native Americans were allowed to serve, that when they came back, they would take them down and they would do this cleansing ceremony. When they came back from Vietnam, they would do this cleansing ceremony.
Don't they, when they do that, they put them all the way in the water?
I believe so.
I think is what he said.
Yeah.
For us, we just went down to the river bank, and he just got handfuls of water and put it on our forehead and said some really nice cleansing.
I made a video about it because it was something, while it was an experience, but it was something that was very, very deeply moving and important to me, that somebody took what we said out there and thought enough about us to do something like this, something that they've been doing for centuries.
And that we were worthy enough to be inclusive, even though we were outsiders, to be inclusive of their traditions that they hold very near and dear to their heart. That was quite the honor.
I think about that quite often because I was just looking up pictures today, and Parker came up, and I watched the video again of that happening, and it was just a really amazing experience.
Very surreal. Those officers work with short staffs. They work long distance, 400 square miles. Their hands are basically tied. They're underpaid and understaffed.
Underpaid isn't even that doesn't even. What the one guy told me, $30,000-$40,000. How do you live? Like, I don't care what part of the country you live in. How do you live at $30,000-$40,000?
And they all are so far away. They commute to 1 and 2 hours each way to even get there. But those guys, they're mostly guys there. They're not doing it for the money. They're not doing it for the fame. They're doing it because that's their calling, and they put their whole heart into it. And I love going there. Now, I have to tell you guys, funny thing, we're in our rental car driving from Las Vegas. If you don't know where Parker, Arizona is, try to find it on the map. It truly is in the middle of nowhere. I have flown into Phoenix and gone what would that be?
South.
Go west.
Is it west?
I think it's west, and that'll get you to Parker. I've done that. Or this time we flew into Las Vegas and drove through Havasu and on down to Parker. But we're driving through the desert, and it was beautiful. Kevin was driving. We had the Apple Play up on the rental car.
GPS, yeah.
The map. And Kevin, now I'm from middle of nowhere, Kansas, but Kevin looks at the map and goes, "Where the hell are the roads?" And
it's just one. So let me paint a picture of what the GPS looked like. A straight line going up and down, and that's it. It looked like a Wile E. Coyote movie.
One road. That's all there was. There's no tributaries. There's no off ramps. There's just nothing. Just one road.
Well, so those are the side benefits of going out and doing these things, because when we're in front of people, we're bearing our souls. We're telling them our deepest, darkest secrets to try to give them some knowledge that they can take into the investigative world.
And it's emotionally exhausting.
It really is. Like when we're done teaching a class, I go to my hotel room and I am out.
Yes.
I am out. But then we have these fun little adventures. Like that particular trip when we were in Las Vegas, we met with the chief of a Las Vegas police department. We drove right past Gold & Silver Pawn Shop, where I'm looking at the Mob Museum, and it's just little things like that. Havasu, the London Bridge, and I all that stuff. Like that's an experience to me, and I couldn't do that without you giving me the grace of bringing me along with you. Because here's the bottom line that I've learned from working with you: you don't need anybody, okay? And following you sucks. Okay, I recently said this in California. Following Sherrie talking is like following Wyatt Earp teaching how to be a tough police officer. It's a next to impossible. So what do I got to do? I got to be snarky and I got to throw a joke out. But here's the thing with both of us, because we both do it. When you say something awful, I watch their faces. When I'm not up, I watch their faces, and you'll say something awful, and everybody's afraid to react.
Yes.
They're afraid to react in terror, or if you say something funny, they're afraid to react. And we have to tell them, no, you can.
It's okay to laugh.
Yeah, it's like I say to one, I was a real pain in the ass, and I don't suggest it. And everybody sort of looks. I'm like, it's okay, you can laugh.
They're not sure if you're joking or not. But what I was seeking, and I realized, and I don't think I even told you this, when we were in California, I wanted somebody that would get to know me well enough to know my craziness. And when we were in California, I think both of us were there, got introduced to a chief who was very abrasive. And I could only, about 15 seconds in, realized he's way too abrasive and I'm way too not. And so I stepped several steps back from him because I was about to cry. He wasn't talking ugly to me. He has a very abrasive personality. And as I stepped back, you stepped forward. And I thought, we got this. Because you were watching me enough to know that I'm recoiling from this guy. And so you just stepped in and I don't think he bothered you at all. But to me, it was like, oh my gosh, I'm 7 again and I'm about to be beat. But
that's experience from police department. Okay. I know not all chiefs, but I know a lot of chiefs who they need to be told how great they are every once in a while. Otherwise, they're not going to listen to you. It's the way that it is, you take it for what it is.
So that's what I was hoping for that would come. And I told Gary I had to step back, and Kevin just immediately stepped forward, and I thought, this is good or good.
Well, that's the beauty of going somewhere like that with a partner. Okay, while you're in a foreign place and you're in because I traveled before I was a police officer. You're in a foreign place. You're in a foreign land. You don't know anybody here. The only people you know are the people you meet there. But it's different with us. Like, um, I can call you up. Hey, I'm going to go get some lunch. You want to go get some lunch? So at least I have somebody there. I have some family there. And, thankfully my wife is gracious enough to say, yeah, this is because she knows full well that what we're doing, I find a lot of purpose in, where when I lost my police job, I was, the opposite of depression is not hope, it is purpose. Okay. And police work was my purpose.
Mhm.
I found a new purpose here because I can't be a police officer anymore. So in many ways, you've given me back that portion of my life, that purpose-driven life. And, aside from my faith in God, you've given me back purpose here on earth.
And I think you bring a lot to the table because law enforcement, which is my love to teach law enforcement, they know you're law enforcement. And so they respect you already, and there's a kindred spirit there.
Misguided respect. I'm not that respectable.
Respect nonetheless. There's this kindred spirit. And I also love the way that you work your childhood and the people in your neighborhood, and you bring them in straight from Jump Street, and they're like, "You did what? You lived where?" And so they're leaning in to hear you, and then you walk them through, and they're fascinated by you.
That's the podcast world. So you always need a hook. That's what it is. You need a hook. You got to hook them in. And when you hook them in, you can actually tell them what you want to tell them, something that's really important, something that has value to them. Because if you lead off with that stuff, you might lose them. But, that doesn't happen very often in classes where we lose people. But also,
Oh.
my value is, again, sitting in those classes, I know who is like in California, the one girl in the back, she said something and she kind of cornered herself. And I'm like, oh, you just cornered yourself. You're in trouble now. But it relieved that pressure from her because she was feeling
Yes.
uncomfortable.
And I think, if anybody's listening and thinking, oh my gosh, uh, maybe I'd like to have you come teach which I love doing on-site training because we can catch a whole, throw a wide net and catch a lot of officers. But it is not death by PowerPoint, and it is interactive and hands-on and fun, as much fun as that can be, and funny and
It's fun because I get to do it with you. That's why
but
it's
I mean
fun.
for the class.
Yeah.
I think
But that comes through too.
if you can make that heavy of a class fun, then we're doing something.
So where would you hope if you had a crystal ball in this class, where would you hope, what is your vision for the future as far as teaching this class?
I wish more sheriff's departments and police departments would recognize the value of our training. Um, people that have been in my class, I've had people say to me, every officer across the nation should have to sit under your class, Sherrie. Or I had one guy say, you are making me think back on every sex crime I've worked, and I did a horrible job of working them because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I know when I work with law enforcement that the next time they work a sex crime, they're going to do it differently. So, if I had the wherewithal to start in California and work my way across the nation, I would love to hit every police department. I like the rural ones because they don't get training. I like the big ones because they get training, but not training like us. And I just want to help them do better. I don't want them to, I tell them that we offer new interview techniques that will make you rethink your interview tactics. And I don't want them to throw out the baby with the bathwater. I just want them to understand that victims of trauma don't process and don't think like victims of other crime. And I know they want a conviction and the victim wants a conviction and everybody wants a conviction, But the reality is, out of every 1,000 rapes, only 996 perpetrators walk free. So 4 out of 1,000 are convicted, and we're missing the mark.
And when we did this in California, I piggybacked that off because we're talking to people who are decision makers within the departments, and I said, imagine if you were able to go to your bosses and say, I've doubled our conviction rate for rapes, doubled them, which means instead of 4, I got 8, which nearly isn't enough. Okay, that wasn't the point of that, but I got their brains work. I wanted to get their brains working in a certain way that the bar for success is so low that success is almost a foregone conclusion. And I think that hit a little bit.
Mhm.
I think that hit, but I certainly would love to do it full time because I enjoy it. I don't enjoy 6-hour plane rides. That I don't really care for. And I don't enjoy flying in windy conditions, but
A lot of stipulations.
yeah, a lot of stipulations, but it is an incredibly fulfilling thing that you've brought me into. I can't thank you enough because, like I said, you've opened my world up in many different ways, not just traveling, but me personally and through my personal journey. And I don't think I could have done it with anybody else. I really don't.
What I love about having you along is I always every class I've ever taught, there's never been a time that I haven't had a female officer or not come up to me and say, "You just told my story," or "I've never told anybody," and now I have the opportunity. You and there's one man in particular from California that I'm thinking of, and I'm convinced that you touched a place in him that he's never allowed anybody.
In his heart, people, not his pants.
Oh, Lord.
In his heart. Let's make this clear. Okay. So
I reel it back in.
So being so far removed, you being out there telling your story, do you view your trauma a little bit differently? Because I know I do. I do. I view my trauma as something awful, but it was also, I was set up with the opportunity to succeed, be it 50 years in the future, 40 years in the future. But that set me up for a place that I don't think I would ever reach if I didn't have that trauma as a young child or trauma after my shooting. Do you see something? Do you see your trauma as a childhood differently? Where you used to see it as something just sheer awfulness, and it is.
I have the knowledge that you can't get from a book and you can't read about to learn. I mean, you can, but I have a different kind of knowledge. And if I can use that knowledge for good, then it's not all for naught.
There's a purpose to it.
And whereas it's been like a cement brick my whole life, and from a girl who was scared of her shadow, and
now you get
now
now you can ask for tea.
I can say, Kevin, please drive 2 blocks out of the way. Now I can stand in front of audiences of 1,000 and tell my deepest, darkest secrets. But I feel like I have something to offer the world that most people, even people that have lived my life, because we're filled with guilt, shame, and humiliation. Not just everybody can stand in front of crowds of people, and tell what happened to them. So, and that's all. That's not Sherrie. That's God pushing me and opening doors that I could never have opened on my own.
In my life, I've witnessed true strength in many different forms. I've witnessed people lifting enormous amounts of weights. I've witnessed officers fight the stigma of mental health. I've witnessed children overcoming their limitations. But I will say this, the strongest person I ever met in my life is Sherrie Allsup.
And I feel like the weakest person. Thank you.
And if you're the weakest person, that doesn't bode well for the rest of us. So Sherrie, we are coming to the end of this.
We just got here.
We just got here. Now, from commercials that have been running for a year, everybody does know where to find you, but please tell us again where we can locate you.
The jumping point was episode 169. So you can find me there if you want to know the whole backstory. That's on episode 169. Funny thing about the Suffering Podcast family, when we were at your book signing, it's not what's your name or where you from.
What episode?
What's your number?
What's your
I'm
number?
169.
Right. Well, that's what went on your name tags.
That's everybody would ask about you. So you can find me there. You can find me at my website, which is sherrieallsup.com.
The Sherrie Allsup on Instagram.
On Instagram, and I try to be very, you can always find me on Suffering Podcast Lives. I'm there, so come join us there. I will tell you that Keith no longer says hello to me on those because he feels like he got in trouble for talking during class.
Oh, it's because you guys were having a private conversation.
So, Keith, you can talk to me anytime.
But it's a funny thing about this family, and it's the trauma that you said it in the very beginning, trauma that binds us together, trauma that brings us together, and trauma that gives us comfort as this family. And that's all. It's the only thing I ever wanted for this show, just to let it out, bring us together, and nobody judge one another. And I hate to say safe space because I'm not a buzz term type of person.
Where's your clothespin? Or your clothespin?
Is that what
Safety
it is?
pin. Safety pin.
But it's a non-judgmental place. You'll get your chops busted because I will.
I am not going to be in here with all you guys.
Oh no, you wouldn't. Listen,
I would cry.
There are people who want to, like we're a zoo attraction. Oh, I want to watch you guys out all together. I'm like, Tom said it perfectly. Tom said you will regret that decision instantly.
I would cry.
Yeah, you got to have some really like rhinoceros skin.
I don't.
So Sherrie, you've told your story so many times. You go out and teach these wonderful classes, this trauma-informed training. You've overcome so much suffering. But in this journey from where you started to where you are now, what do you think that suffering in there has taught you?
I think through my speaking, it's taught me that I can be brave and I can be bold, which I don't think I am. I am very dependent on Gary, my husband, and this has taught me that I can, albeit I may fall flat on my face, and he's always there to pick me back up, I can get on a plane and I can go somewhere and I can get a rental car and I can find my way to, I don't ever go anywhere that's in the same town. If we're going to Georgia, we got to go to Atlanta and then drive to Macon. But I spent my life thinking I was worthless and dumb and stupid and fat and ugly and all the things. And people want to hear me, and that's really foreign to me. They want to hear me, and they come up to me and say, we're getting ready to go to Hawaii. The girl that introduced me to the person there,
Sergeant, yeah.
She's heard me 3 times. And she said, Sherrie, I can't wait to hear you again. And I said, but you already know my story. It's like the girls in Thibodeau. They've said under me 3 times, and they'll send me a note and say, you're coming in June. I can't wait to hear you. Why, you know my story. Why are you coming back again? And that's what I'm thankful for.
Well, I'm so glad that somehow you took pity on a guy from New Jersey and brought him along for this ride. But yeah, you're a superstar in my opinion, because you're what real strength looks like. And I thank you very much for coming all this way.
Honey, I'm home. That's what I wrote on my cup.
Well, thank you, Sherrie. And I can't wait to see where's next.
Yeah, I'm excited. Hawaii.
Gatlinburg
and Hawaii. Those are.
And then Thibodeau and then Parker and then a few places in between.
Keep up with us.
Yeah. So that's going to do it for this episode of the Suffering Podcast, the suffering of trauma-informed training with the one, the only Sherrie Allsup. And let's think about all the stuff that we learned. Trauma gets carried with you. Just ask, even if it's tea. There is no trophies in trauma. Experience impacts more than knowledge. But most importantly, be brave, be bold, be like Sherrie. And that's going to do it for this episode. Don't forget to go to popple.com, put in the code TSP20 for a 20% discount on your digital business card. Follow us on all social media. That's Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, LinkedIn,
OnlyFans.
Follow me at Real Kevin Donaldson. Follow Sherrie at the Sherrie Allsup. And of course, follow the Suffering Podcast. We'll see you on the next episode.